Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are taking our very first look, I just had a seizure, at the new Tier 8 Pan-European battleship, the Karl XIV Johan. So with that being said, let's look at the commander. It's Janko Vukovic. I hope I say that correctly, but you guys will probably let me know down in the comments that I butchered it. But this is the main problem with this particular ship, is that you just don't get an option of how you need to build the ship. You get no hybrid commander like the Germans get, so you don't get an accuracy plus secondaries. If you could do that, then I think this ship would be a lot better. But as it sits right now, it's pretty unimpressive for the most part. Unless you're getting up against like tier 7s, getting close is going to be brutal. The accuracy with the main guns is awful. So I don't know. You guys will have to let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm real interested. I've seen a couple of people posting videos on it, but personally, I think it's pretty crap with this commander personally. But we did throw Andrew Cunningham on there for a little bit better grouping, because the grouping, as you're going to see, is going to be terrible. We've also got Franz von Hipper. Secondary gun range, secondary battery shell grouping. His perk, his base trait is fire duration minus 9%, which isn't terrible. He's got a fancy trait up here, a special skill called Reckless Gunman, which allows you to have a faster reload. It's kind of like Brawler without the bad of Brawler. So Brawler gives you a 10% reduction in reload, but it doesn't allow you to see torpedoes quite as far away. But if you use your brain, you shouldn't be eating too many torpedoes anyway, especially when you got sonar, which this ship does have, even if it's not a great sonar. So it's not a big deal. This is like a budget brawler, and no downside in terms of the battleship main battery range being cut. So at least you got that going for you. Obviously, we run Porcupine. We've got Firefighter for a little bit, survivability, Master Mechanic for extra damage cons, and then Fight Fire with Fire. If you're really looking into getting into brawling, you could potentially go with the running with scissors here, but just the amount of HE spam that's out there, it's probably a good thing to just keep Fight Fire with Fire. Now let's get into the rest of the ship. So I do have the secondary battery mod 2 on. I've got propulsion mod on. I feel like this ship turns well enough that you don't really need the steering gears. And then of course we're running concealment, and we're running the secondary battery mod 3, epic secondary battery. Just because you've got them, they're long range, you might as well use them, right? Now, because of the fact that we're running Cunningham rather than running one of our other commanders like Haruna, it's going to eat away at our range a little bit, but it's not terrible. We do have 5 heals. We got 2 sonars. Like I said, not the greatest sonar in the world. 4.7 kilometer detectability. Minute and a half or minute and 38 seconds duration. So not bad there. Doesn't feel like it lasts that long sometimes. Seems like you put it up and sometimes it just seems like it's gone already. But it'll help you for those situations where you think you're going to be torped anyway. But you only get 2 of them, so use them sparingly. And then, of course, the enhanced secondary targeting consumable, because that's all you can use. So, not too bad. It's not quite as good as an enhanced secondary targeting consumable as the new Japanese battleship gets, but it does actually last a full 30 seconds, and you get 4 of them. And these secondaries actually pin because you get 150 mil secondaries, so we'll get into it. I'm running the Type 9 camo that comes with the ship. We've got the Italian Unity flag because it kind of looks like a Spartan. Survivability, 72,900 hit points with a 20% damage reduction. Artillery, main batteries, 305 millimeter 56 caliber SK6C39. I can't speak. I just finished my live stream, so I apologize. But you get 12 guns, 305 millimeters. Same thing you get on like the Brandenburg, the Odin. Not quite as good because you don't get any of the perks from Hyde, so you don't get any accuracy at all. It's pretty abysmal. 17.1 kilometer firing range with this build. 23-second reload's pretty decent, but again, these are only 305 millimeters, so they're actually not that good of a reload, especially considering we have a perk that buffs the reload. So it is 12 guns. So I guess that's the caveat. 180 degree turn time is actually not too bad, 30 seconds. HE shell maximum damage is 4,350 with a 28% chance to set fires. Shooting HE out of this thing may not be the worst idea. It's not accurate enough, really, to be consistent with the armor piercing. You're going to get a lot of shells that are bouncing off of turret faces, off belt armor. It struggles at hitting consistently. AP shell maximum damage, though, is terrible at 8,400. I mean, it's 12-inch guns or 12-inch guns, 305. So, not the best guns in the world. Secondary armament, 120 millimeter 50 caliber model 1949s. You get 12 of those, reaching out to 9.8 kilometers with this build, so plenty of range. 2.4 second reload time is absurd. Okay, keep that in mind. That is crazy. Maximum HE shell damage is 1,700 with a 7% chance to set fires. And the secondary armament, 150 millimeter 45 caliber SKC-9s. You get 14 of those, so 7 per side of the ship, which I believe are in casemates. You get 9.8 kilometers of range, reloading in just 6 seconds. That's a 150 millimeter gun, reloading in 6 seconds. You've essentially got half of the firepower of like a Worcester on the side of your ship, essentially. H shell maximum damage is 2,200 with a 13% chance to set fires. So unlike the Japanese battleship, these secondaries hit, they do damage, and they set fires. So it's kind of like the triple threat, right? Torpedoes, you get 533 millimeter quad torp tubes. You get 4 of those, 2 per side. So you get 16 total torpedoes with 8 per side. They're not bad either. They don't do a lot of damage. So you do lose in a brawl versus like Schlieffen or other battle cruisers like that because their torpedoes are just going to hit harder. But it's nice to have them. If you're using your guns as well in a brawl on a drive-by, you're going to hit them very hard with the torpedoes and you're going to be able to usually take them out with your guns. Schlieffen and I got into a fight in Two Brothers, of course it was, and we traded torpedoes. I lost, he wins. So versus a Schlieffen, you're not living, okay? Unless they're dumb. But probably not. Torpedo detectability is pretty average, a little bit worse than average, I think. I think the average is usually 1.3, 1.4 kilometers, so this is a little bit less sneaky, but that's because they're fast torpedoes. 10-kilometer range and 86 knots. These torpedoes will get out there and get it, okay? So I have a tendency to overlead these torpedoes because they're so fast. I forget about them. I'm thinking torpedoes from a German battleship, slow as crap, but no, these legitimately do get out there. AA defense for a German battleship. I'm going to keep calling it a German battleship. It's a German battleship that was bought by the, oh God, was it the Swedes? Somebody. It's a Norwegian, or it's a Norse country, right? I'm crazy. Anyway, AA defense, not terrible. You get 16 40 millimeter 70 caliber Bofors, 1948s, so very good. 40 caliber or 40 millimeter Bofors are fantastic. 418 damage per second, reaching out to 3.5 kilometers. And then you got the 120 millimeter 50 caliber model 1942s. You get 12 of those, doing another 146 damage per second, reaching out to 5.2. So solid AA for this thing, but not a lot of it. So if you get into a fight up close and personal, a lot of that AA is going to get chewed up pretty quickly. Maneuverability, maximum speed 30.5 knots, so pretty solid there. Turning circles, not great, but not terrible. 890 meters. Rudder shift's pretty bad for the size of the ship, so 16.4 seconds. Not great. It's pretty much Iowa-esque in terms of rudder shift. Again, we didn't buff the rudder. This thing does seem to turn okay. That 890 meter turning circle bails it out quite a bit, so you can cut in and angle relatively effectively. I apologize if my voice is gone. It's because of you guys. I was doing the stream, so my voice is a little bit shot. But concealment, you got 13.3 kilometer detectability by sea. At tier 8, that's fantastic. That's really, really solid. I mean, that's almost what Yama gets 13.2 question mark. Most of the battleships get 13.8, so pretty sneaky for a battleship at tier 8. Detectability by air is 11.1. Guaranteed is always 2, and detectability while firing in smoke is 12 kilometers. So decent detectability in smoke as well. Statistics are going to be terrible. I got a 60% win rate, but that's not because of anything I've done particularly well, to be perfectly honest. This thing has been pretty abysmal to take into battle, but I've been bottom tier pretty much every time I've taken it out, and going up against Musashis and Yamas with this thing's side armor is pretty sadness. Torpedo accuracy is very good, as you'd expect. I mean, you're launching them up close and personal most of the time, so you're going to hit more often than not. Main gun accuracy is not that bad. You're going to hit a shell most of the time, and that is not reflecting on the overall shell grouping, I promise you. That's mainly because I'm up close and personal, so 40% main gun accuracy is way overselling the ship, I promise. But average damage shows that it's pretty low. My average damage is only 75,000 in a battleship. That's pretty bad, especially for tier 8. So pretty low there. Armor-wise, let's get into why this thing is struggling. So you've got a 32mm bow. That's fine. Everything except Musashi and Yama, you can angle it. But Musashi and Yama are going to absolutely tear you apart through the bow. So you got to angle. Problem is, if you angle, the ship is very flat. And angling, unless you're really close range, angling doesn't seem to help a whole lot. You're going to take a lot of pins. Your torpedo belt's not going to do you any good. So let's take a look at that casemate armor. It does have a torpedo or a turtleback armor scheme. So it's kind of what you'd expect there from a German battle cruiser or battleship. The upper side plating, I believe, is 100 mil, yeah. So you can angle the side armor decently, but just because people don't overmatch you doesn't mean you're not going to take those pins. Much like the Minnesota, the Vermont, the Kansas, that flat armor from being a World War I age design hurts. Angling it effectively is very difficult, especially with casemates right there too that like to grab a hold of shells that are coming in towards the center of the superstructure. But this ship is essentially the Brandenburg and the Zeton had a baby and sold it to a different country. That's basically what you got. So if it had a better commander, I've said this with many ships like Atlantico and stuff, like the commander hurts, but this thing does have a below the water citadel, so that's nice. So even if you do get caught, I mean, you're not going to take citadels very often in the ship unless you're turning out. Kind of reminds you of Gneiseno in that sense. So unless you're turning really hard towards the target that's shooting you, probably not going to take a citadel, even if they go through the bow or stern side plating. Stern obviously is a little bit wider, so if they go through that, you could potentially take a citadel there. But in the bow, it's really narrow, so it's most likely just going to overpin most of the time. But yeah, let's get into the overview. Secondary reach, above average secondary battery range. Ironclad, above average armor thickness, greater resistance. Again, it's thick because it's a World War I design. It's flat, so it's not as effective as later, thinner, angled armor. Area denial, above average number of torpedo tubes. This is something that we talk about all the time. This thing has pretty good torp angles, unlike the Japanese, so you can use them. Unfortunately, once again, they're towards the back, which helps them sometimes, but with a lot of secondaries, if you're closing in, the secondaries don't lead you very well, so they tend to hit right in this area. So again, it's one of those situations where you just don't end up having the torp tubes when you need them up close a lot of times. But it's not terrible. The Karl XIV Johan. Under the Treaty of Versailles, the German Navy was limited to ships with a displacement of no more than 10,000 tons. However, these restrictions did not extend to the construction of ships intended for other nations. After World War I, Germany was left with several hundred unfinished ships. Some of them were completed and sold abroad. Sweden, I was right, driven by its aim to bolster their naval forces, could have explored the possibility of acquiring and completing a German battleship. She was designed in 1952, which explains why she's got such modern anti-aircraft as those nasty Bofors. But I wish the fire control for the guns was a little better, because, phew, she's rough. Alrighty, so now that you guys have heard what the ship is about, and you've seen what it can do versus a cruiser who has no idea what they're doing, now we're going to showcase it against some other folks who were clearly misinformed about what this thing is capable of. That being said, I have yet to have a truly breakout game. I've had some okay games, but this thing is just struggle bus for me. I've been put into a lot of, like, bottom tier situations where I'm up against a lot of Musashi, Yamato. I know Musashi's technically same tier, but it still has the overmatch. And with this flat armor, man, it's a struggle. And then on top of that, like, it's not that great at ambushing. For a couple of reasons, as we're going to showcase in this video. But it's very difficult at tier 8 and legendary tier to close the distance to make these types of ships viable without having something to fall back on. And that's where I struggle with this thing. It just, if it gets the commander where it has a like hybrid commander, much like the German Hyde, then I think this thing can be a lot better. But until then, the main gun accuracy, or in this case, lack thereof, is just abysmal. Like, it's awful. And then on top of that, these do not feel like the punchy guns of the Odin. These feel more like the mediocre kind of wet noodle AP that you get on the Brandenburg. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know. Odin seems like anytime it gets a look at a ship, it's going to punish that broadside, right? It punches through every single time. Whereas Brandenburg tends to hit things and shatter or ricochet or just come up with relatively mediocre numbers. It really doesn't have, despite them both being 305mm guns, they couldn't feel any more different when it comes to the main guns. But as you can see, there are clearly people, and this was filmed this morning, by the way, there are clearly people that were ready for this ship and decided to buy out the campaign day one, and for you, God bless your soul, thank you for keeping the game open for all of us, because, whew, you picked a rough one, boys. I'm not gonna lie, you picked a rough one to get day one, but, hey, you know, to each their own. There are, for every time that I get into a match in this thing and struggle because the entire enemy team is full of capital ships that are just absolutely the perfect counter to this thing, for every one of me, there's somebody out there like Aaron who gets like the absolute god tier matchmaking that just allows you to just bully people, which no matter what ship you're in, you're going to do well in, right? And this is no, you know, different. But as you can see, like, that's the other thing that this thing struggles with. The thing struggles with keeping the guns on the ship. Like, it just constantly loses turrets. Now here we get a beautiful look at an angled gearing we take, and we hit him with 4 shells, surprisingly. I know. That surprised the crap out of me. But we are spotted. I'm expecting potential torpedoes from this guy, so the last thing I want to do is sit here. So we're going to go ahead and turn on that beautiful sonar. Again, unfortunately, this does not get the German long-range sonar. This does not get a 6-kilometer torpedo, or not 6-kilometer torpedo, 6-kilometer ship detection. It's only 4.7, so we have to get real close to this destroyer before we finally pick him up on sonar and try to finish him off. Now here, I should have shot him, but I wanted to get the torps away and then use the island to scrape him off, just in case. Meanwhile, I have my own destroyer helping to murder the guy, and I didn't want to pull the trigger because then I get lit up. That being said, now there's another destroyer on the other side of me in the Charlie Cap, and he's going to be spotting me. So, what you need to keep your eye on is the fact that there is a Yamato right on the other side of this island from me, and if there's one thing we know, it's that he is unlikely to kill me with a single shot. However, he's not the only one there, is he? It's a Yamato, a Zhao coming back from the left flank, and a Karl XIV. Now, the Karl is moving away from us. The Yama is closing to within 6.4. Secondaries are starting to open up on the Ruprecht on our left. We're going to try to lob the island if we get a chance, but I think this Ruprecht ends up dying from the torpedoes before we ever get a chance. But at this point, as he starts to close in on me, I'm still spotted from the destroyer, unfortunately. We do get the torpedo, or get the secondaries to fire on the torp boat for a moment. But I'm just baiting this Yama, right? Like, he knows I'm here. There's nothing, I'm not hiding, right? I want him to come to me. I want him to commit. And as soon as he does, we're going to ruin his life. Because Yamato, Brawling, not good. Unless, of course, you're me, in which case I'm used to doing it in stupid ships that I probably shouldn't. So, I can handle the Yamato in a brawl. Doesn't mean it's a good idea. Anyway, Shima is behind the island now, so we don't have to worry about that. The Yama is now within 5.4, 5.3. He's closing the distance. It is time. Zhao has doubled back. It's time for us to make our push. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. The main event of the evening, Yamato, close range, versus the Karl XIV Johan. Who is going to win? Who is going to lose? I can tell you this right now, it's not going to turn out well for either of us. We're going to take, come around the island. We've got our torpedoes ready. First torps away, second torps away. I keep forgetting to swap off of the wide-angle torpedoes, but we get a shot right through the cheek, and we get a single citadel. And then he repays the favor. He gets a citadel and absolutely murders our face hole. But we score 3 hits, 3 floods, and our destroyer manages to yoink the kill. Go figure. But we are ready to engage the Zhao here, so we're turning away from the Zhao's location, expecting potential torpedoes in the near future, but I don't have any way to detect them, so we're going to have to play pretty smart. We don't have our rear guns available. We do have these torpedoes going. These are very fast torpedoes. Remember, Screamer torps, 86 knots. We fire the guns, and absolutely nothing happens. That is what you can expect out of this thing. At 5 kilometers on a broadside Zhao, not exactly a tiny ship. We only hit, like, no shells. Sadness is what I'm thinking. But we do hit him with a torpedo, and that's a flood and some fires going on from the secondaries. We're going to try to avoid the belt armor by aiming high. We get 2 pins this time, but 2 of them did drop down into the belt. And surprisingly, we haven't lost the torp tube, but the Zhao really hasn't hit our torp area at all with his secondaries or his primaries. So we're just kind of bullying this Zhao. This Zhao has made huge mistakes in his life. I don't understand what his thought process was, but somebody needs to teach this man how to play Zhao. Because this ain't it. But we get a good shot into the superstructure, whittle him down a little bit more. We are going to get our damage con back here shortly. We still have 3 heals left, so we can use those heals. We don't have to worry. And as soon as we get our ship pointed in the other direction, we know that we have 2 enemy ships left. One, I believe, is a Brawling, and the other one is the enemy Karl, right? So we're going to try to put ourselves in a position to intercept the enemy Karl. We're going to go ahead and heal up. We took a lot of damage from that Yamato, but thankfully, between all the fires and stuff, we were able to heal a lot of this back. So, goal here, intercept the enemy. Okay, it's our Burgonia. I knew there was a Burgonia somewhere. Versus whatever that ship is over there. And the Karl. The Karl being the guy that's further back that is not spotted currently. So you can see here, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I can do in terms of like detectability and my ship and firing ranges and all of that. Like, this was literally one of my early games, and it was a solid game. It is nothing bad necessarily about this, but look at my Burgonia over there. He is full broadside to this Karl, and this Karl gets an accurate freaking salvo and absolutely paddled the man, leaving him with less than half his hit points. And he's going to keep chipping away. Now, the Burgonia says hello to the Karl for over-angling in this ship. And you can see, even the 15-inch guns of the Burgonia just melt this thing. Like, there's just nothing you can do about it, man. All you can do is pray. Just pray that you angle enough and the person shoots your belt and you're close enough that it doesn't miss your belt, or you're angled enough that when it hits your belt it doesn't pin. Like, it's brutal, man. People think I'm joking about this, but I'm not. I don't hate the ship because I hate the ship. I hate the ship because the commander sucks. It really does. If you could get these guns on point, I think they would be better, but they just, as they aren't particularly amazing. But unfortunately, Karl is broadside, or fortunately, he's broadside, but unfortunately, he's about to get behind an island, so any potential damage we're about to get is about to go out the window. Now, I do believe I go ahead and punch up my sonar here pretty soon, because we're within torpedo range, or close, as we're closing in on him. He's definitely capable of torping us, so we want to make sure that we have the sonar running. Also, maybe potentially helps protect the destroyers, so they can see it a little bit sooner. Doubtful, they're kind of far ahead of me, but you never know. Here, I'm expecting Karl to come out from behind the island, mostly over-angled, so pretty hopeful that he's going to get lit up here. Unfortunately, Daring is not scared of this guy at all, as he probably shouldn't be, because he's just going to YOLO around the corner on this man, send some torps, and neuter him. I think we get one more shot in this lobby at this enemy Karl, because, again, don't really have a line of sight on him because of this island. Daring does get into the cap and contest, and you can see I do drop some torpedoes. And I think we even had some secondaries fire at the Karl momentarily, and there you go. We actually got the defense, so we get credit for the defense there. The secondaries, for what they are very accurate on this ship. I'll give them that. They're decently accurate. So if you get into a fight where you're able to use those secondaries, chances are they're going to be hitting what you're aiming at. But again, it just at this tier, it's so difficult, man. Especially if you've got no accuracy. Like if you have main gun accuracy, you can work. You can take your time, get in range when people aren't all just ready to kill you. With this thing the way it is, like you don't have a choice but to close. But 103,000 damage, I know that this is capable of more damage than this. It just depends on the right lobby, right circumstances. But as of right now, this is the best that I've gotten. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, I will see you in the next video.